Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? We are talking about the Joker movie. A lot of people have been up in arms. This podcast will have spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie yet, do not listen to this podcast because we will be talking about the Joker movie at length and the controversial issues that were in the Joker movie. Joining me once again, the radical voice of logic, Mike. Thanks for joining us. And I will first want to start this off with your just overall impressions of the Joker movie.
Sure. Well, I appreciate this movie. Let me just put it that way. Let me start with that. Because first off, I just like the idea of like an event movie where everybody has to see it and talk about it. And the Avengers is one thing, but this thing is something totally different. I mean,
Yes.
it's a character study. It's about one man's descent into madness. I mean, it's a little more thought-provoking than anything that's been kind of the big movie that shows up that everybody has to see. I just appreciate it. You know what I mean? Beyond that, I just enjoyed the movie. I thought it was well done. There was a lot of throwback.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 80s, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was 81 or 84. It's supposed to take place, but it's Gotham, so everything's a little screwed up. But it's New York City.
Obviously New York City. There is, without a doubt, the complete allusion to New York City.
Sure, and I mean, this movie reminded me of so many movies from that era, from Taxi Driver to Death Wish. Even like some movies people might not know, like Fort Apache, The Bronx, or Taking a Pelham 123. These like old school movies that just shows the grime and dirt of the 80s and 70s New York City. What do we call it? You know, one closest to the Joker is Taxi Driver probably, but also Network. People should watch Network now. I hope people kind of movies now. Like
I'm mad as hell and I'm not gonna take it.
Yeah, there was one shot of all the TV screens showing the Joker, and it was just right out of Network. You know?
Yep.
But, I just love that stuff because it's cinema that we just saw.
Yes.
That's what it was. It was real cinema, and Martin Scorsese talks about how those Marvel movies are not cinema. We can talk about that a little later.
Yeah.
But as for the actual movie itself, I really liked it in a lot of ways. I enjoyed it. It was funny because I watched it in New York City.
Oh, appropriate.
Very appropriate, with a crowd that was probably like, maybe they'd snicker at certain points that were corny or something. But since we're going in deep into spoilers, when the Joker kills those three guys on the subway and then he goes and he hides in the bathroom and he starts dancing, everybody was quiet.
Yeah. So
like, haunting.
Before you get going, I want to give you my overall impression. So I keep telling people it's a very good movie. It's not a fun movie. No. If you want a good cinematic experience, if you want to cringe, but like in a good way, like last time I was like leaning away from the screen was when I was watching Joe Pesci and Goodfellas talk about, you think I'm funny? You know, you're in your seat. He's not in the room, but you're like, ooh, you know, you don't want to make that guy mad like that. Sure. And so this movie had a lot of that, like when he was descending into madness or just enjoying one of those madness moments, I'm just kind of sitting there like, ooh, I don't want to be close to this right now. Like anything could happen. I'm not ready for it. Like a lot of this movie I was not ready for. And so I feel like it was a ride. It was definitely an emotional, dramatic, and like as you're saying, a descent into madness and the fact that you're just with this character the whole time. Like you feel and start breathing with this guy almost, and you can sort of predict his it's not his mood, like his reaction to what's going on. It's predictable because you're right there with him as it's descending. So you're like, oh, he's accepting this now.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Go for it.
Do you think people... I want to word this properly so it's not like super controversial, but did you connect with the Joker at all? Like, did you identify with him, or was he just a monster that you didn't identify with?
I tweeted something, and it'll answer your question exactly. I tweeted that this movie should win the award. Should win the award for I know it's not right, but I understand. 2019.
That's the name of the award.
I got a bunch of retweets on that. I'm like, I know it's not right, but I know where he's coming from. You know,
putting Chris Rock right now.
No.
Okay. All right.
I just. My friend used to say that, and now like this is the only movie that I'm watching, and the only concept that I agree with that. You know, I know it's not right, but I know where he's coming from. I'm saying I understand, the scene, what got me, and it was almost like license to go off, was when he was in that social worker's office and she gives him the bad news, like, oh, we're gonna have to close this down, and those people don't give a fuck about us or shit about us. I can't quote it, but it was that moment where it's like, you know, it has to do with like the healthcare issue that we have in the country, and you know, if you don't give people the opportunity to get out of the bad situations that they're in, that's like chasing a wild animal into a corner, and then you're gonna see it fight its way out, or try to get some relief in that situation. Which, if you're in the way, that's what's gonna happen. And so that's why I'm saying, like, it's not right, but I understand. Like, if you chase a rabid wild animal into a corner, you're now a target. And so you're watching that happen to this guy where he's got nothing left. Everything's getting taken away from him. He's also getting rid of his baggage. You know, the fortunate scene with his mother. He's got nothing. So he once he zeroes out, when he starts making his own positive energy, it's not agreeable.
Yeah, I mean the tragedy is, I mean, killing those guys made him happy. Him, you know, like gave him some purpose and he wasn't the victim anymore. He was the victimizer.
And you know, have you seen Dexter?
I've been compared to Dexter.
Oh yes, Mike. Yes. I used to joke about that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so he's a serial killer, but it's because he enjoys doing it. Whereas the Joker, I think you're right in a sense that he was happy because he wasn't the victim. So I don't think he enjoys killing. It's more there was a purpose. There was again, he was like that wild animal moment, and then all of a sudden, once he became the asserter, then he realized, well, he took his dominance with him.
Well, the fucked up thing to think about is, like, in the real world, is that justifiable homicide, what he did to those guys in the subway? And you know, it kind of isn't, but to be honest, 3 guys beating you up, you have deadly force at that point. You know what I mean? So he wasn't entirely like the aggressor. He was just minding his own fucking business. I mean, he has a disorder that causes him to laugh. It doesn't mean he should be beaten to death. But I mean, it wasn't quite Joker was the bad guy doing bad things. He was being attacked. He was outnumbered. He pulled a gun out and shot 3 guys. Was it excessive? Yes, because he shot them and all that shit. But I mean, it wasn't like serial killer stuff. It was self-defense that got out of hand.
Exactly. Like there's obviously a line he drew. No, there's a line he crossed. So, you know, the first guy that he took out, that was like our shock. Like, oh man, he pulled it out because you know he had it. And you're waiting to see when he was going to make the decision because he was very close to it. And you knew he was losing his shit. And then the first guy was like, oh, that's what got them off him. And then it was excessive after that.
And one of those guys looked suspiciously like one of Donald Trump's sons, by the way.
Oh God. Yeah. I don't even want to open that can of worms.
Red Letter Media, you guys should watch that. It's a pretty good review. They mentioned that. I'm like, oh shit, they're absolutely right. Which is a little fucked up, whatever. And that's part of the reason why this movie is kind of inspiring a little controversy, because it was supposed to be the left that was supposed to be, oh, this is controversial because it's right wing, but now it's the other way around. It's kind of a left wing movie that, whatever, which we can get into later on if you want. But
so let's focus on that scene while we're here. Again, we're on spoilers alert, and the scene we're specifically talking about is when he's on the subway. Essentially, he kind of did something noble to, I guess, protect or defer the attention off the woman that was on the subway. Yeah. And then he kind of got beat up for it, and his disorder where he started laughing happened, and he got beat up. Mm-hmm. So, Mike, I need your opinion and your evaluation of that, because I just said, you know, the first shot I think was justified because he was getting his ass kicked, and with a disorder and all that, he could potentially, it could be lethal force because those guys obviously weren't paying attention. They were kind of drunk.
Sure.
So where do you draw the line in that scene, and should it, like, what made that controversial? Because I'm just seeing a story here.
Sure. Well, here's the thing that a lot of younger people don't realize is that was inspired by a true event. That was inspired by Bernie Goetz in 1984 and the subway shootings. People probably have, you know, it's a little it's 1984 at this point. I mean, most people don't remember. That was a very big deal among my parents' generation. It was like this guy essentially was defending himself on the subway and then took it too far. And it was, I don't know the specifics of the case, but it wasn't quite cut and dry, good guy, bad guy. It was one guy was getting bullied or whatever, robbed, whatever it is, and he went a little crazy. And it was a very, very big story at the time. And this is the time frame that this movie's allegedly, supposedly taking place in the early 80s. Brings up a lot of really controversial things. And this is also Death Wish, the guy walking the subway, but he was stalking people. And I don't know if you've ever seen the original with Charles Bronson, but he was stalking bad guys after what happened to his wife and his daughter and everything. He was carrying a revolver in the subway, hoping that someone would do something so he could shoot them. It's a little different also,
Yeah.
So this is inspired by a lot of other movies and real life situations and everything, but there's no good guy, bad guy anymore.
No.
That's reality anymore of the situation. I mean, you can bring up other cases too, but like he chased him down and shot him in the back. I mean, you can't really, in a court of law, he'd be guilty of I guess,
course,
murder, manslaughter, whatever it is. But you can't get away with that, what he did.
But see, again, so now this is where the sentiment of the movie, and I'm going to bring up what I said earlier. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I understand. And that's what happened with the crowd in the movie. Because obviously Gotham City was struggling. There's a lot of people that were disenfranchised. They were not doing good. They were disheveled. And whatever the case may be, they're just not a well-off population. Mm-hmm. And it was almost heroic, and that's what the movie shows. Like, well, these guys kind of got what they deserved in that situation. Obviously, it was taken too far, but the symbolism of some rich kids and just getting taken out. They don't just run the city. It was almost like a bit of a rebellion, and so the action of what he did was wrong, but iconically, it resonated through that population because it's almost like somebody kind of got what they deserved.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's not ringing well with people. What do you think?
Yeah, man. When you're watching the movie and you kind of process everything that's going on, it's not a very responsible movie to make by a major motion picture studio.
Explain that. It's not a responsible movie to make.
No. Because
what do you mean?
You have essentially the Joker finds his identity and he finds his purpose in killing people. And another thing to think about, fame is something that you kind of have to address here. Like some people, and this is very common, they just want to be famous. They just want to get noticed. They want validation in their life. So they shoot up a school and they become famous and everybody talks about them. You know what I mean? There was a little bit of that in this movie because he wanted to be a stand-up comedian. It didn't quite work out, but now he's famous for shooting Robert De Niro in the face on live TV. You know what I mean?
Gosh.
Which we can talk about also later. But you know what I mean? Like, it's a fucked up thing to think about, but a lot of times the media feeds into this notion of being notorious is better than being anonymous. I mean, I want people to know my name. I want people to acknowledge my existence. And that's kind of something that Joaquin Phoenix talks about. It's like, you guys don't notice me, you walk all over me. He's mad about it. That's the MO of a lot of school shooters. That's the MO of a lot of really bad people out there. They just want to be noticed. Oh, and a little side note, I'm sure people have maybe seen this video. Have you seen the video of the school shooter who was stopped by, I think it was the coach?
Yeah.
And he hugged him? Joaquin Phoenix and the Joker wanted his dad to just give him a hug in that one scene in the bathroom. You know what I mean? Human beings are complicated. We want affection. We want acknowledgement. We want security. But at the same time, we're angry. We're not getting it. And we lash out. There's a lot of really terrible things going on in the human brain, human heart, whatever the quote is, good and evil goes through the heart of every man. But the Joker, the reason why I think it's so interesting is because you kind of empathize with the guy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, man, that's pretty rough. And I mean, there was a lot of really subtle sexual stuff in here too, which was very like, it wasn't really focused on. Like there was the girlfriend that was imaginary, just the girl living down the hall there, which was fine. That was very Fight Club-esque, for anybody who's seen Fight Club. But there was like, porn pictures in his notebook that he was like going past. And there's one scene he was masturbating, very subtly masturbating in one of those scenes. And
I kind of forgot.
He was just like playing with his dick in the bed, and we're like, oh boy. And then he stopped and he answered the door or something. But sexual repression is something that this movie kind of touched on a little bit. I mean, when you're a man and you're not getting sexual attention, you can lose your mind. You can really legitimately go crazy, as some of us unfortunately know. you know. But I mean, that's something you just have to think about mental health wise. You need Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You need just things to just work out. You need food, water, shelter, attention, affection. You need it all. When people don't get it, they get angry and they rebel. They lash out rather instead of rebel. But
see,
a lot of darkness in that movie, man.
I think Arthur's character had a little bit of something that everyone could relate to. He had everything. Let's say they had like a whole list, but for everyone watching the movie and the viewers, and I think this is what made people uncomfortable, was like, well, if you don't have a lot of money, you can relate to him. Mm-hmm. If you have a mental illness, you can relate to him. If you have one parent and you've been abandoned by your other, that crowd can relate to him. If you have a sick parent, you can relate to him. You know, if you're single and you're having a hard time finding someone, you can relate to him. So there were so many individual relatable factors that just, I'm telling you, probably made people feel so uncomfortable. I heard that there was people actually walking out of the theater. I'm pretty sure I know what some of those trigger moments were. But for the crowd that just feels awful about it, I think they feel awful because there's something there for everyone to be relatable to. There's something there for everyone to relate to, even his stand-up career. How many times are people they're trying to do something creative with their life, or they have some sort of endeavor, and it's not working out?
That's the one I have.
He also, hey, Mike, how those scripts going?
It's going good, by the way.
Please don't go to any movie theaters anytime soon. No, I'm kidding. Please, I'm kidding. Before anybody listening to this thinks they have to do something about that.
No, it's fine. It's just a quick little sidetrack.
Mm-hmm.
I did like Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker better.
Okay, yeah,
I really did, because it's kind of a bummer that we're not. Oh, let me just freestyle for a second here.
Sure.
The entire movie, I thought this was setting it up for the new Batman that's coming out with, I think, Robert Pattinson. Pattinson, is that his name? The guy from Twilight.
Yeah.
Well, I saw him in one movie. I forgot the name, but it's like a new. The guy's. I'll find it later just so people have a record of it. But he's a good actor. I think he's going to do good as Batman. But I thought this was just setting up for the Batman movie, for where Joaquin Phoenix is the bad guy and he grows up. It gets spoilers again. Bruce Wayne was a little kid and now he's going to grow up with his nemesis being this older character. That's not happening.
No, it's not.
It's a one-time.
It's a one-off.
It's a one-off.
And I almost think it's like a weird, twisted, beautiful one-off.
Yeah, like, I'm not mad at it because I think as a single movie it works, but you would think that Marvel Studios is like, dude, this is 10 movies we got right here. This is it. One movie with Joaquin Phoenix and that's it. It's a wrap. So it's like, okay, so is someone else going to play the Joker in the new Batman movie coming out in a couple of years? Like, now it gets weird. But the reason why I like the Heath Ledger portrayal of Joker better was because watching it in a movie theater too, both times for me was packed movie theater. The reaction of the Joker was pretty somber. There was a couple of snickers here and there for some of the scenes, a couple of big laughs, but otherwise people were just like uncomfortable and mortified what's going on.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight was a different kind of movie, but there was such an emotional roller coaster in that theater that you can't even top with the Joker. I mean, you were laughing your ass off, you were freaked out, you were uncomfortable. Like it was such a different range of emotion that Heath Ledger kind of tapped into. And the reason why it worked is because you had Batman and you had Joker. They're two different philosophies. They're two different forces and going against each other. Needed a Batman in this movie eventually. Like, there should have been something, but it wouldn't work.
No.
In a weird way. If you had Batman just appear later on, it would just be weird.
Yeah.
So, like, it's such a complicated thing when you think about just the history of Batman as a character and the Joker as a character and, like, where it's come down to and what to do in the future now. It's very strange.
Yeah, well, I'm going to relate this to something. Did you play the Arkham games by any chance?
I played a little bit, but I know of them, but I don't.
All right, so spoiler for the Arkham games. I'm just going to say it like a little bit here.
Yep.
What I did relatably to the Joker movie and to the Arkham movies was there was a relationship between the Joker and Batman. Like, the Joker would get Batman dead to rights, but wouldn't really take. It would always kind of give him a chance because they needed each other. Like, they needed their struggle and their conflict to validate each other.
Yeah.
And then what I loved. And I translate that now to the Joker movie. What I thought was kind of endearing was that, like, they could be half brothers, so there is literally bad blood kind of between them. And then if Joker does grow into his role where he just kind of likes torturing Batman for validation, and Batman has to feel like he has to lock up Joker for validation, that relationship begins. Like, I could see that relationship showing up there. And the Arkham games is the first time I actually seen that. Like, they really developed Joker and Batman. And even in the third movie, it's the best one because not the third movie, the third game, because Joker's actually infused, like his consciousness is in Batman. I'm not going to explain how that happens to not give it completely away, but Joker isn't in the third game at all, but he's in the game the whole time. And that relationship between Batman and Joker it's incredible. You don't get that from a movie, but I honestly thought like that's where that relationship, like they set up that wonderful relationship between half brothers, like my daddy didn't love me, he loved you kind of thing. And that's another relatable thing that you can have if you're sitting in the audience, you know? Like, there's so many terrible, relatable things. But I thought it's a one-off. It would be cool. Like, my imagination already filled that out, and I could appreciate that I had those thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense that they don't kill each other because they might be half brothers. That's the only reason they don't kill each other.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Like, obviously Joker, like, in old lore, Joker has just straight up killed people. But they still put him in Arkham Asylum, you know? And then Joker has Batman dead to rights. Why put him in a cage above sharks and lower him slowly into it? Just shoot him, you know? Like, stuff like that. I don't...
Make a shitty movie. It's a 15-minute movie, a long movie. Just kill the guy in the beginning, you know? Like,
yeah, exactly. It makes for a bad movie, but they definitely established some sort of relationship between Bruce and Joker, and it's Daddy loved you more. And Daddy took care of you.
Yeah, it's something else I kind of appreciate about this movie is that it was a reverse telling of a superhero movie. It was a supervillain story, and you know Thomas Wayne was an asshole.
he really was.
Frick. And I kind of like the Christopher Nolan Batman because it was like the one Thomas Wayne's character in that trilogy was like an actual patriarchal good man who was like fighting the good fight. And it was who Batman wanted to be. And I like that better than Thomas Wayne being a shithead. You know, like.
Well, I think they definitely play with the lore a bunch of times because there's the Telltale Batman's game. Yep. And in a Telltale game, his dad wasn't exactly clean, kind of like in this Joker movie. And I think there's more depth to that. It's more humane, you know? Yep. Like, for the longest growing up, you know, to me, Bruce Wayne's parents just got shot out, and that's what made him Batman. Mm-hmm. But now there's like a prequel story to that. Like, what if Batman became that because somebody else was just like the snowball effect is like my misfortune becomes your misfortune. Yeah. And there's so much more depth to that. Like I appreciate it more. Like my imagination has totally filled out some more of my Batman lore in the past, if that's actually a thing.
Sure. I have to give credit to Michael Keaton's portrayal of Batman and Jack Nicholson and the Joker, because when you were a little kid and you watched that was fucking cool.
That was cool.
Like that was my. I mean, I don't hate to say favorite that because it's a little juvenile.
Yeah.
When you look back at like the first Batman, they did so much right in that movie. It was so cool, and you know, so like you find out spoilers for that movie too. You find out the Joker was the one who killed Batman's parents. Like it was so like, oh, you made me, I made you type shit.
Yeah.
Cool. But you don't know what the real story of Batman should be because there's been so many incarnations at this point, you know. And the Joker origin stories. This is a different type of Joker origin than we've seen. I mean, I like the Heath Ledger one because he was just anarchy. He was sadism. He burned a big pile of money. He didn't give a fuck. And everything was made up, so you don't know what was real, what was not. There's a great theory that he was actually a soldier coming back from war, which is a new modern intake of the Joker character. And it was kind of like, if you look at it, it kind of makes sense. And it was like the resentment of a wounded soldier and war, this type of thing. But there's layers to all these Joker portrayals, you know, and Joaquin Phoenix ones was pretty layered. But he was never normal, though. He was never a normal guy. From the beginning, from birth, he was just destined to be mentally disturbed.
He was forsaken, essentially, too. Like, here's a character that's just meant to be forsaken by society. That's just his destiny, is to be forsaken by society. He doesn't fit in. Can you get a job? Can you keep your shit together? Can you stay healthy enough? Like, he was a clown, which is even degrading right there. No offense to clowns, but, you know, some people are are clowns that don't want to be clowns.
Let me interrupt you. I'll offend clowns. Fuck clowns. I hate clowns. I don't like clowns. All right, I'm saying it right now. I've always been creeped out by clowns to begin with. I don't like clowns, for the record. All right,
okay, Mike.
Right.
Now I know where to take you.
Yeah, don't take me to the circus. I'll tell you that. I watched Zombieland years ago, and it kind of overcame my fear of clowns because, spoiler alert, one of them gets hit with a big hammer or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Didn't work. I'm still afraid of clowns. I don't like them. All right. Notwithstanding. Yeah.
Let's bring this to a relatable mental health conversation, because we are obviously, it's 2019 at the moment that we're recording this. We've got trigger culture everywhere, and I think the trigger culture is because there's a lot of people that are forsaken, like I just mentioned, a lot of people that don't feel like they have a place in this this society that we have. There's tons of us. There's not enough opportunity to go around, and so people are struggling with their mental health. And one of the things I believe is a fallout from that is this trigger culture that we have, where somebody needs to be about something and they need to identify with something. So if you offend that something that they're trying to be part of, them, damn, you're triggered, and they have to go get a team to tell you to shut the hell up and you're a terrible person. So
yeah, it's a tragedy right now, because one of the arguments that people made is that what the modern left is doing with all this outrage culture and triggering culture, it's the exact opposite of making a human being that can deal with the world. It's literally the worst thing you can do to someone is say, we're going to create safe spaces. We're going to give you drugs to numb the pain, like psychotropic drugs, whatever it is. Everything wrong they're doing right now. So we're way off base on how to deal with all these things, which is, again, why Jordan Peterson is so popular. Anyway, I talk about it all the time, but it's worth mentioning. I'd love to hear Jordan Peterson's take on this movie. He's had
a rough time right now, right? He's probably not available.
Yeah, he's going to be a while before he's back on the airwaves and everything, because for people who don't know, he's dealing with some family health issues with his wife and all that, which you got to give him space. You don't want to just drag him back to the worldview again. But this is a weird movie that it kind of reminded me of that Jordan Peterson talked about, a movie called Crumb. It's a documentary about the cartoonist. I forgot his first name, but it's pretty interesting because it's kind of the same thing that Joaquin Phoenix is going through. He's a young male who doesn't have any sexual opportunities, and that causes mental illness. And Crumb kind of taps into that a little bit. Like, you hear guys talking about women when women just kind of rejected them completely, and it's just like, what do we do? Like, how do we deal with sex? How do we deal with relationships? How do we deal with this when women are just not interested? And it's a tragedy, and it's terrible, but so many men out there just have no financial or sexual opportunities, and they're just existing. And video games are an outlet. Pornography is an outlet. I mean, we're all guilty of it, but I mean, it's a bad situation to be in. Men, especially young men, need purpose, and maybe it's better that they're in their parents' basement rotting away instead of out on the streets causing problems. But okay, there's going to be a lot of problems coming out from this, and this is why I said this was kind of an irresponsible movie to make, because now they have this hero figure now, the Joker.
Oh, right. It's like they made him a hero. And you know what? I actually saw some allusions, like these Joker masks, these clown masks are almost going to be synonymous with anonymous masks, you know, and Guy Fawkes and that, and the V for Vendetta thing. Like it's an iconic, like just taking that mask or taking that symbol means I agree that there's something wrong.
Sure.
And it's almost like it's a collection of, you're identifying with those collection of issues. And so wearing a Joker mask now or relating to a Joker mask right now, saying, well, something was right in that movie. And I think that's what you mean by it. It was an irresponsible movie. You're giving people an icon. Like, they have a heroic, like an anti-heroic icon to represent all the problems that we're having in our society. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the problem is that the message of this movie was just kill the rich and fight back and cause anarchy, but that causes more totalitarianism when that happens.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird situation to be in, because violence and anarchy and all this stuff doesn't really solve too many problems, because then you start a war and then you have more problems, and then from the ashes comes something new, but sometimes the new thing is worse than the old thing.
Yeah.
What happens?
I feel like people, they crave order. Like, when things get so chaotic and everything's burnt down, some sort of order comes from everything burning down, but it's probably not a good thing, because It didn't have time to come from a good space. It was desperation. So you got order out of desperation. It's not going to work. You're just desperate for order. You need to control people. So what happens? And I actually learned this the other day about there's like leadership styles, and the authoritarian and the dictator will show up when people just need to be ordered what to do. Like they're a professional at what needs to be done. So like I have orders. You build this. You build that. You do this. You do that. You need that just to get everybody organized. So if the wrong authoritarian government or order comes out of the ashes, it's not going to be good. So it's a cycle that we need to get out of. And I mean, you saw what Gotham City looked like at the end of that movie. That's ridiculous. Who wants to live like that? Don't.
When I left the theater, I felt like I was still in the movie because I was in.
Yeah, because you're in New York.
What the fuck? This is the sequel to Joker I'm in right now. Yeah. And it was kind of fucked up because I had so many weird things happen in like a 20-minute period. Like my train wasn't arriving. There's a guy playing AC/DC Highway to Hell in the subway. Then some guy was harassing a pretty girl on the train, and then 3 well-dressed guys came up to me and like, hey, I don't mean to bother you, but have you heard of Lord Our Father? Do you want to? I'm like, whoa, I'm not interested, buddy. You know, like whatever it was. So it was like felt like
you were in it.
I just did it burning cars and some clown masks, and I was right there. You know,
it's almost like you were in the amusement park for the movie. Like Universal Studios sets you up. That's what it seems like you went through leaving that movie theater.
It was fucking insane. But the problem, like a little example that I'm finding out more when I'm researching through history is after Vietnam, like the communists won, quote unquote, and they took over all of Vietnam, and they had like indoctrination camps and all this shit. But the left got what they wanted, quote unquote, and it made everything way worse. So like Todd Phillips, I think, is a very talented filmmaker. Martin Scorsese, we can talk about. I think he's one of my favorite of all time. He's the best. But I think the main issue is, and this isn't meant to offend or whatever, is that they're good at what they're doing of crafting a story and making people empathize with a character and all this stuff. But like, if you podcast it with them, I don't know if they'd have ideas that would make the world a better place. They're good at telling the story, but like, okay, well, the story's over. Now what? Well, I don't know. I just know things are fucked. It's like, well, it doesn't really help too much. You know what I mean? So like filmmakers, I think the problem, and this kind of goes to cinema versus movies versus whatever, you know, like we can have this argument. But I think a lot of filmmakers and most filmmakers, they're good at what they do. But beyond that, it's like when it's time to actually solve some of these mental health problems or problems with politics or violence or whatever, they don't really have solutions. They're just kind of telling the story of that some things are wrong. But it's a totally different thing to actually solve these problems.
Well, think about it like this. I'm going to take this movie as it's a Cliff Notes package on what's happening. You know, so if you take what's actually happening in the world right now and you just amplify it, you know, you amplify it and you mold it. I was listening to a podcast. I think it had Jason Silva in it, where editing and creating a movie is like sculpting time. And so you take a timepiece and you sculpt it. They sculpted time. It's like, well, if people are struggling, this is what this one man's stories look like. This is his struggle. This is everything that's wrong. And this is his outcome. They sculpted that time to give you like a window, like a microscope to a moment in this guy's life. Literally a moment, because it's not even that long. It doesn't take a lot of time during this movie. So it's almost like a gift. Like, here's what could happen, or here's this is under the microscope. This is definitely a timepiece. It's definitely a reflection of our society. It's like, what is it? Art mimics reality. I forget what that is.
Life imitates art.
Yes, life imitates art, and art imitates life. So we have that with this movie, and it brings a discussion. Now, right now, it's in 2019. There's actually a small part of the population having great conversations. We have the internet, we have the freedom of speech, and they're having great conversations about the problems that we have in society. You and I listen to those guys, Jordan Peterson and all the whole intellectual dark web and whatever you want to call them, Sam Harris, Joe Rogan, all these guys, all these great guys they're discussing our society. And then this movie entering pop culture is forcing these difficult discussions that I don't think our society and a lot of people are ready for, and that's why I think this is controversial. So what advice, Mike, would you give to someone that really wants other people to relate to this story but not think it's controversial? I mean, it's controversial, but like the release of the movie shouldn't be controversial. It's just art.
Well, that's a fucked up thing to think about because I mean,
I'm sorry.
Shakespeare. Shakespeare is violent.
Yes.
Deals with a lot of suicide and all this stuff. I mean, you're never gonna ban Shakespeare. You know, like people shouldn't try to ban things that make them feel bad. Like,
oh, can you say that one more time?
They shouldn't want to ban things that make them feel bad.
Thank you. Okay. Just want to make sure we got that on the record.
Yes.
The voice of radical logic.
But that's just what it comes down to. Like when religious people say that you shouldn't have, I think like the famous one back in the day was Piss Christ. I don't know if people are old enough to remember this, but there was some art who was portraying like the Virgin Mary and urine or something, and he said it was art. People are like, no, it's not art. It's blasphemy and this and that. But it's like he did that for attention. This artist, you can look him up. He did it for attention. He did it to create a rise out of people. But he has a right to do that. He has a right to be blasphemous. He has a right. This is America. You can be as blasphemous as you want. You can't say someone can't express themselves, even if it made you feel bad.
That's a good point.
It's really what it comes down to.
It took a while to get to that point, but I understand your point.
Kind of see where I'm coming from. So people will say that the Joker shouldn't exist, and a lot of people were saying it was right wing and it should be whatever.
I don't even know how that's right wing.
Well, that's the thing. They didn't see the movie. They thought it was because it was a white male who was complaining about being oppressed or whatever, and it wasn't about that at all. It was about classism. It was about a lot of other things, mental health issues, etc. But I take issue with people who want to take things away from people who, at the end of the day, it's just art. It's just film. It's just storytelling. I mean, Saw, Hostel, all these movies. It's a nightmare situations. You can't get any worse anymore. There's nothing worse you can portray on film anymore that would shock people, short of children getting murdered or something. Like, there's very few things you can portray in film that you can't. And I mean, Shakespeare's violent. The WWE is violent. I mean, break. I mean, I don't think people should blame the portrayal of violence for violence anymore. I think and the tragedy is that it used to be the right wing who was all about this. Ban video games, ban this, ban that. Now the left has become this arbitrary, or I don't even know what the word is, the guardian of moral standards now, the Victorians for now. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, who are you? Like, pick a side. Like, are you about freedom of expression or not? And I think the Joker has a point. It has a purpose. It's going to help at the end of the day. But there is a danger of someone getting inspired by this, just like I guess Taxi Driver inspired the guy who shot Ronald Reagan. I forgot his name, but like that was he had an obsession with Jodie Foster from that movie. He had an obsession with Catcher in the Rye. We shouldn't ban Catcher in the Rye. I mean, there's a lot of examples of people getting inspired to do something terrible. And I think you're going to see in the next few months, something's going to pop off and it's going to be blamed on this movie. And it's unfair to the movie. It's like these people are broken.
So what bothers me, if that happens, and I don't want to say when that happens, but if that happens and they want to blame this movie and this portrayal of violence, it's not the violence, because violence is everywhere. Honestly, I think we've become so desensitized to violence in real life and in our cinema and in our art. It's in video games. Well, what do you do? Like, there's always people, or there's always something that's an obstacle in front of you. And how do you get rid of the obstacle? With violence. They don't have a video game where you like debate people and you win points for making logical arguments. Hopefully that's what we're working on, Mike. No, but
that's a great image of like a game where you hug people and like talk about problem solving.
Yeah, make the world a better place without violence. That's not it's coming out in 2020.
2020, 2050. You kidding me? It's never happened. But like that goes back to our monkey DNA. That's not what we're into. We're into tribalism. We're into football. We're into sex and whatever. Like, that's just, we're still monkeys playing with the internet. It's just ridiculous.
So let's go back to your irresponsible comment you made earlier. How do you honestly, was the movie trying to be irresponsible, or were they just trying to be a movie? Were they trying to make a statement, or were we just not ready for the statement and it was irresponsible because we are in 2019?
Let me clarify a little bit. Yeah. I think it's good that they released this movie. I think it was brave.
I think so too. Very brave. That's a good word.
It was brave because it was kind of irresponsible to take this risk.
It was rash.
It was very like, you guys are taking a big risk with this. Like, are you sure? Like, and it's a $55 million movie, I think, which is nothing compared to $1 billion they spent on the Avengers.
It's profiting so much. I just read an article today. It's it profited more, I think, than the Avengers because of its budget.
think that's great because I mean, this could be the most profitable movie ever because it just took a risk, and I think think about it this way: are there going to be a rash of all these new reimagining of superheroes like the Joker? Like, is Doctor Octopus going to get his new fucked up origin story? And like, I don't know, man.
Did you see what I said? I made a comment on a social networking platform. I don't even want to identify them.
Social media anymore. I don't see anything.
Okay, so I made a comment and I said, well, now we can get a really deep, wholehearted movie about Pamela Isley, who would be Poison Ivy, who goes insane about this whole climate change thing because she wants to protect Mother Nature. So therefore, you have an anti-hero who thinks they're doing something very good for the planet, but you can't just eliminate human beings that are ruining the planet, because it would be easier to do that than reason with everyone that's been indoctrinated. Sure. But I was like, that's a realistic idea. Like, that could be like a string in this theme of like anti-hero. That's already happening. Like, there's people arguing and protesting and blocking cars in San Francisco because they want to make a statement about climate change. And then, did you see that? Then some dude like rips a sign and like throws it over a fence. I mean, like, please, people need to work. People need their livelihoods. Don't protest in front of other people's livelihoods. There's definitely a better way to do that. But sure. It's happening. Like that. I could already see that happening. You know, there's a deep movie about climate change. We just had a deep movie about mental health. You know, what if there was a deep movie about what's going on in Michigan and not having access to clean water, you know, and some anti-hero springs from that. Like,
and you kind of reminded me of a novel from Tom Clancy years ago called Rainbow Six. Like, all the video games are based on it. Do you remember? Did you read that novel at all back?
No, I didn't read the novel.
The premise was, and spoilers for that novel from 1990, whatever. A bunch of environmentalists were trying to wipe out humanity to save the planet.
Wow.
Was the goal there, and that was the premise of the story. So they might actually make that in a couple of years. So that's kind of what they're going to go for. You know, that was terrorists who just said, you know what, the Earth is better without humanity. Wipe it out. You know, it's like that's kind of what's going on in some of the extreme circles. They think that we should just phase out humanity for the sake of Mother Nature, but nature's metal. Look at that Instagram feed. Look up Nature is Metal, guys. That's a great one. Yep.
There is something to say about how what happens in cinema kind of makes an entry point for what's about to come. So, for instance, we had a ton of movies about artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And it was like iRobot, and we've got Skynet, and we had Lucy, I think it was, with Scarlett Johansson. It wasn't essentially artificial intelligence, but she turned into one. And we had like
New World Order conspiracy.
Then we had Johnny Depp. Let's not get started. Yeah. And even in some video games, they have like AI takeovers and stuff. And so now we have a set piece. This is like almost, I would dare I say, like the introductory main pop culture set piece to problems with mental health. Now this is like the next big bad guy that we have to tackle. It's been happening. We've got the shootings. We've got people committing suicide. We have uber depressed people. We have a pharmaceutical crisis with opioids and people trying not to feel pain, but they don't feel anything. They don't even feel happiness after that. So I feel like this finally might be like that art piece, that milestone in time that takes us forward into an issue that we're going to have to deal with. Like, we've been dealing with AI, and I know there's a lot of techies that made restrictions and rules on like what AI should and shouldn't do. I know Elon Musk was saying that on Joe Rogan's podcast. So now what do we do? Now that mental health has been thrown in front of us as this huge, massive, colorful gift that no one can ignore. Now what do we do with mental health going forward? And I think that's what this Joker movie did. It's the entry point. And now we're just going to see a trend, because if it made so much money, now everybody else is going to try to make money on this type of relatable content.
Yeah. I mean, the movie Jaws scared people out of the ocean for a long time. You know, let's get real here. Nobody was really afraid of the ocean in 1968.
No.
Nope. Kind of afraid, but not really. But after, was it 72, whatever, 73, whatever, Jaws? After that, people stayed the fuck out of the ocean. I'm like, no, thank you. So you can kind of have the same kind of phenomenon here. Like, people can have an honest discussion about mental health issues, but, you know.
All right, Mike, I'm going to give you a challenge. We're going to probably wrap this up soon.
Yeah.
So my challenge is, what would you say if you got into a conversation, if I'm across the way from you, which I am right now, And I'm explaining to you that I'm completely triggered by this movie. I wanted to walk out. This movie shouldn't even been made. Do you know what it's going to entice people to do?
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to someone confronting you about that?
Sure. I would say that the people who see this movie and think other people shouldn't, this movie is speaking to you.
Oh.
Like, you're the problem. Simple as that. Like, I don't watch certain movies because either they're not for me or what have you, but I will never say that another person shouldn't watch any of these movies. It's not my place. It's not, I don't have...
Very fair.
It's not about me and my ego and what my standards are or anything. Like, I've never seen the Twilight movies. They're not... You know, I'm not going to say some teenage girl can't watch Twilight. Like, do you like Twilight? Do you like Harry Potter? Cool, rock and roll. It's not for me. No big deal. You know, I don't like horror porn movies. You know, I've seen Saw, which I thought was okay. It was pretty good. I liked it. You know, it was twisty and turny. But then, like, just the horror porn subgenre, like, I don't particularly care for. I don't want to see that stuff.
There was actually a medical insurance issue in Saw. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay, if you pay attention, I forget which movie it is, but there's actually like a medical insurance issue in Saw. And they even mention how like the Asians do it right, where you pay when you're healthy because you're paying for health, but when you're no longer healthy, you stop paying insurance because it's up to the health officials to, well, not the health officials, but it's up to the health department or whatever you want to call it, the health segment of society to bring you back to health, and then you start paying into your insurance again while you're healthy. That was actually like a thing, but the thing was, Saw might have been like just a horror porn movie, but they tried. They put something in there that was relatable to what we were going through.
Yeah, but I mean, my point is like it's not my place to tell anyone they can't watch a specific type of movie.
Yeah,
there's a lot of movies I watch the trailer, I'm like, no, thank you.
Same.
You know, like, but it's people's egos are so out of control right now, where they think that they are the standard bearers for what people should or shouldn't watch. I mean, we talked about, I don't know if we talked about this on a podcast, but like the Dave Chappelle special, like all the critics were saying you shouldn't watch this and that, but it has like a 90-something%.
Yeah, everybody swallowed that up. They loved it. They just couldn't get enough of it, honestly.
But here's the problem: like that, Dave Chappelle went against the tribe. He went against the team that and the left kind of freaked out a little bit. I mean, if you made a movie about a Christian who went away from the church, the right would have a problem with that. Why would you go against the church? Don't watch this movie. Don't listen to him. He's poisoning your brain with blasphemy and all this type of stuff. So, I mean, so many things have become a religious type thing right now, where it's like it's a tribal religious thing where either support the team or we're going to shut you down. Scientology does it. You know, Christianity does it. Islam does it. I mean, so many groups of people do the same type of thing. And the left kind of does it with movies they don't approve of, you know?
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's a tragedy that it's just become another tribal religious mess, which that's the reason why we're in so many problems to begin with, but it creates a community. That's why there are still these religions going around. And Joker kind of creates this weird community at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
These people who have their tribe now, their team, their identity, they're wearing the masks and everything. Is it a well thought out team to be a part of? No. It's about anarchy. It's
chaotic. It's just,
I don't know what I want, break it all down.
If you can't deal with the situation logically and formally, you know, we have all these rules and courts and ways to deal with it. It's just not working. So introduce chaos. And that's what I feel like Joker did. It just introduced absolute chaos to shake the system up. And, well, what I was mentioning earlier, kind of burn it down a little bit. Maybe it doesn't burn all the way down, but then the people that are in power, the people that can do something, can provide the right opportunities for the people that are not doing well to actually elevate their status.
You know what? This might sound a little weird, but I'm thinking about the movie Joker more and more. I like the movie and everything, but I think the character of the Joker was kind of a miss because he should be a terrorist in a weird way. He should be a very thoughtful, sane person who is making these decisions to create chaos. He shouldn't be a broken person who's creating chaos. He should be like, there's a political bent to the Joker as a character. Like he's a terrorist in a lot of weird ways.
No, well, see, okay, let me. I have to redefine terrorist. I got to make sure that you're using terrorist the right way. Okay, so a lot of people are up in arms about there's terrorism everywhere. The way you define terrorism is when there is an act or some sort of violent act or some sort of intimidating act that represents one group of people against another group of people, that is terrorism. Now,
Well,
the Joker was just a renegade. He was just a renegade.
Okay.
Which made a team. But if it was like, if you burned down a bank and you were saying, I represent this chaotic faction and we want to send a message to these bankers and we're going to keep burning that's terrorism. But without a motive, that was just chaotic. It was just chaos.
There's got to be a new word for whatever the Joker is in this movie. I don't know what anarchist, I guess, is the right word, right? Is it anarchist? Because there's no.
I don't think
it has a political.
It wasn't like anti-government. It was just. It was just chaos, man. It was just like a rebellion against the order that existed. I don't know what to call that.
The tragedy is that like all these school shooters or whatever, they don't have a well thought out position. They're just angry and they're just lashing out.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, why a lot of people were freaked out about the Joker, because it was kind of just randomly lash out at people who have it better than you. And that's a terrible thing to think. And it's a weak move at the end of the day. I mean, make yourself stronger. Read some Jordan Peterson books. Clean your goddamn room. Work out. Get your act together. That's the way towards not being so resentful all the time. And this sounds horrible, but I mean, the truth is that school shooters and mass murderers and all this stuff, they have an identity. They have a group that they belong to now. And I mean, I forgot which one. I don't want to name these guys, but a lot of these school shooters were saying like, my brothers in Columbine or my brothers in Aurora. It became this weird little like terrorist unit group thing going on.
See, they're kind of representing a group then. If they're saying brothers, they're connecting to something and they're against something else.
And to be honest, a lot of these guys that I see who join one tribe or one team or another, no other team is going to have them. So they might as well just join the one team that'll accept them as who they are. I mean, could be anything. It could be a sports team. It could be a business. It could be, political, whatever. People just want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And I just hope that nobody gets inspired to do something, violent based on this movie, clown mask or anything. Because once one person wears a clown mask and does something horrible, it's like, now we got to ban the movie. We got to do this.
And we can't make any more art like that. We can't make any more art that may even resemble negative aspects of society. It's going to be an issue. Like, I think we're safe right now, but I really hope nothing happens.
But think about like a Clockwork Orange. People can look up the history of that movie. I mean, that was banned because there was some gang-inspired violence that happened due to that movie. I mean, there's a couple movies out there that have just inspired people to do terrible things. Taxi Driver is one of them, like we said, but I think it's great art. I think it's important. I mean, Call of Duty's coming out tomorrow. People are going to be shooting each other all over the place. And, don't ban the game because, I mean, give me a break. I mean, you can't ban everybody who's seen the Joker on a terrorist watch list. It's 747 million box office, so good luck.
Wow. What I was gonna say about life imitates art and art imitates life. Mm-hmm. You took it one step about violence. Okay, so we had this thing about violence in video games is what's making kids violent or people violent, and then it's like, well, what happened before video games were invented? Why were people violent? I know we've had like the most violent periods in history of torture and like these weapons that just are there to maim people prior to video games.
The Inquisition. Look up that. Talk to me about
like who thought it was a good idea to make an Iron Maiden? That was before video games existed, So I think we're okay. We're doing a little better than that.
I think we're okay, guys. We're doing all right.
We're doing a little bit better than that.
Well, the truth is, mass media puts such a magnifying glass on anything that happens wrong in the world now. I mean, isolated story in Wisconsin could be heard around the world if it's crazy enough. So people think there's this epidemic, but most people are just chilling out and they're just living their life and behaving. And us at our worst are other people at their best, 150 years ago. You know what I mean? I mean, forget it. I mean, I think we're Penn Jillette said it best, and I say it all the time: is the world is getting better and everybody thinks it's getting worse, and it's the truth. All
right, so I'm gonna try to wrap this up and say, if you sat through this the whole way through and you've seen the movie, I don't think it's that big of a deal in terms of inspiring people to violence or extreme measures to get out of their situation. I do honestly think that it's starting a great discussion, like I mentioned earlier. Like this is a good opportunity to really look at our society, really look at how people are put in these situations, and to do something about it. I think that's the gift that this movie is giving us, because I know a lot of people are struggling out there. And like I was listing all the relatable aspects of the Joker that he had in that movie as a character to what a lot of people I know are struggling through. You know, not enough money, or been single forever and you don't feel valuable to anybody, and not having a job and being unemployed and getting fired. Like these are all real world things. So I believe this movie is a great discussion starter to look at our own society and see what we can do to help improve the situation that people are in. Mike, you have any final words on this movie?
I mean, as a film, I think it's important. I think it's a well done movie. I'm curious to see what the next step is that the studios, because the money doesn't lie. When something's big like this, when Gladiator came out, there was all sorts of swords and sandal movies that came out afterwards. So
yeah,
you're going to see a lot of these movies coming out soon, and hopefully it raises the discussion a little bit, and it helps. And I think the main point of art, the main point of film and everything, a lot of times people just say as long as you're entertaining, it's fine. But I really think to transcend that into what Scorsese would call cinema is to have people think and have people,
yes,
start to question themselves and think a little harder about things. And then give it 20 years, we'll look back at this movie as a milestone, just like we did with Network.
Network, I was just going to bring up Network.
Network, for people who haven't seen those movies, Network is an excellent movie. And the movie I was talking about was Good Time. It's about the Safdie brothers, and you guys should watch that if you're suspicious about Robert Pattinson being a good Batman. Watch that movie and he's okay. But like, I adore these movies from the 70s and 80s, and I think people should watch them again. Also, to remember how good things are now.
Yes.
How shitty they were 20, 30 years ago. Even in the 90s, New York City was so different than it was now. I mean, we're making progress. We're slowly but surely making progress towards the better. Let's just hope we don't slide back into a new dark ages, because it happens. And let's make this internet movie thing work out a little bit in our favor. You know what I mean? Because I think they're great tools. So.
All right, folks. That was Mike, the co-host. Thank you again, Mike, for joining us. Thank you for paying attention to this channel. Again, I'm Jay Bosa. This is the JBosaCoHR podcast. If you liked what was going on, please like, subscribe, the notification bell. I'll do all that general stuff as we still grow this thing. Again, thank you for listening, and we're going to sign out. Thanks, folks.